kid said to me, don't you mean Mr. Aquino? Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Call the Wairika City Finance Committee to order. This is a special meeting agenda for February 15th, 2024. Full agenda packet can be found on the city's website. We're going to start with the, let me see something here. Oh, no. The full agenda can be found on the city's website, www.ci.wairika.ca.us/A agenda, C center. Copies of all staff reports and documents subject to disclosure that relate to any item of business referred to on the agenda are available for public inspection 24 hours before each regularly scheduled meeting at the city clerk's office at City Hall located at 701 4th Street, Wairika, California during normal business hours. Please note the following change to the... Oh, no, this is important. Please note the following change to the city's public comment procedures. Unless a council member is participating in the meeting remotely, pursuant to AB 2449, remote public comment will not be accepted. Public comment may be provided in person or via email as set forth below. Finance Committee meetings, recorded proceedings will be available on the city's website, generally the day following the meeting. So, and materials again distributed are available for public inspection on the city's website at www.ci.wairika.ca.us/AGENDA So we'll go ahead and the Finance Committee is a standing committee consisting of 2 council members, currently Paul McCoy and Colleen Baker, the city manager, city treasurer, and the finance director. And the Finance Committee considers and makes recommendations on matters referred to it by the city council relating to finance, budget, audits, capital planning, and debt. Shall we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Public comments. Public participation is limited to those items listed on the agenda. If your comments do not concern an item listed on this agenda, please address the city council. Excuse me. Please, I'm going to skip that. I can skip that, can't I?
You don't need to read anything on there.
Okay. The city requests that if you're addressing the Finance Committee, refrain from making personal slanders, profane, or disruptive remarks. Yeah, this is a little less formal than council. So, but if you do have documents to provide, it would be great if you had 6 copies. Okay. Hang on just a minute. So do we have any public comment right now? None? Okay. There being no public comment, we will go on from item 2 to item 3, which is public comment follow-up. Now, because there is no public comment, there really de facto is no public comment follow-up. So this time for the Finance Committee or the city manager to respond to public comments and direct staff to prepare reports or place items on future agendas. We're going to skip now, go over it, and go to item 4, and that is discussion of SBITA, and then we're going to have item B, 4B, would discussion of the community center and theater fees. So for SBITA, I'll turn it over to Emily Aldrich.
Hey. We refer to it as SPITA.
SPITA, okay.
Just in case I start referencing it as such. This last fiscal year, it came to our attention that we now have to file GASB number 96, which requires us to account for software leases, and any type of like non-tangible items that we lease that we buy every year, Microsoft Access, Adobe, our Springbrook, which is our software system we use, we have to account for them like a actual physical lease. So we have to put them on our books. We have to amortize them. We have to determine how long we can, how long we're going to be using them. So are we amortizing over 3 years, over 10? What is our expected value? So during our audit, we did that, and it turned out we have quite a few, very long list. And our auditors suggested that we have the council pass a policy of capitalization of those leases for anything less than 15,000. 15,000 is also our threshold for physical items.
Say that again. That we pass a what for anything under 15,000?
A capitalization policy.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
No,
so anything that is over $15,000, we would capitalize according to GASB 96. So that is what's here before you. The first is just the resolution of such. Currently it says the 15th of February. We're going to push it out to March, just as a heads up, so that everybody kind of has time to digest this, including our attorney. We're adding statement number 87 as well under that same capitalization policy. That is for actual leases. We don't lease any we don't lease property. We don't lease equipment that's not to own. But we figured since we were writing one for the SPIDA that we would include the 87 and have that same capitalization level of the 15. Does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm. Does make sense.
So attached is the policy. It kind of goes through the definitions of what is covered and what isn't. Yeah. So do we have, we are retroactively applying this to 6/30. So our financial statements will be in line, I want to say. So we didn't have it 2023. We don't have all of these leases. And then all of a sudden in 24, they're all gone all of a sudden. The auditor is accepting of that and has audited our financials to that level.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have any questions?
Mrs. Baker, do you have any questions at this time?
Thank you. I do not.
This is, this is a fairly generally accepted policy on leases. I mean, on software now I see in other areas, so I have none. And I personally would have no issue looking at the resolution in 87. I would have no reservation in bringing it to the council for a vote so that we can be in line with audit procedures.
Okay. Great. I have no issue. I obviously have no issue with it.
I also have no issue with it.
I do have one question.
Yeah.
So when I worked for the county,
yeah,
it was always GASB 34, I believe.
Yes.
And so now are we up to GASB 87?
96.
96.
Yes. Somebody has been a
Okay.
busy little bee.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
That's, I don't know who they hired, but they're trying to make everything as completely transparent as possible. So we don't have any, City of Bell issues.
It's always a good idea.
Always a good idea.
Thank
So
you.
this is part of our transparency.
Are you comfortable with that though at this point in time?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah, we also in education, like you did GASB, it was GASB 34. I can remember when it started, so.
Yes. Very
We're
busy
going what?
at GASB for sure.
Okay, so any more discussion on that at this point in time? Do we need to have public comment on that? Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I apologize. I'm going to open up the floor to public comment. See if we have any public comment on that policy or where we're going with it. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to now close public comment. And now we're going to go on to 4B, which is community center theater fees. And I'm going to open this up to And now I'm gonna say your name wrong.
Alia.
Yes, Alia.
Alia, thank you. I don't want to say it wrong. Thank you, Alia.
So the discussion title is a bit misleading. It's more like a special event fee discussion. It's a bit broader than just the community center and theater fees. Rada, I have a packet if you want one. So I gave everyone a staff report and a packet of research. So this is a discussion of proposed special events, parks, council chambers, and community center and theater fee schedules. So since our last meeting where we discussed the cost of parades, I did some research into the fees that we have in place for pretty much all aspects of special events, whether it's the community center, theater, even the council chambers, and noticed that we haven't updated them since 2004 with resolution number 2470, which I attached as attachment B. So I also included the original fee schedule as a part of Exhibit A, which summarizes the current fee, the schedule, and the proposed fees. So what I did was I adjusted those 2004 fees for the consumer price index inflation to December 2023, to their December 2023 equivalent. And you can see those fees summarized on page 2. And so today, I just want to have a discussion around these fees. I kind of want to walk through this packet with you and get some direction from you all on how to proceed with these fees. So if we go to page 2, I meant to print this in color. So the highlighted ones, like you'll see on the second special event fee, that one's a little darker. Those are new fees. The rest are existing fees, but they all have associated updates except for a couple. But I'll just run through. I know it's kind of a laundry list. I'll try to not make this super boring, but we proposed a special event fee of $500 per day for the special event. We also have an established deposit for special events that's $500 that we usually waive, or in the past we have waived. The city stage was originally $250. We're proposing $450. And keep in mind that these prices, while they seem like a big jump, they're accounting for inflation. The council chambers is not something we deal with often, I don't think. Those prices are also adjusted for inflation. The encroachment permits, I talked to Matt Bray about these, and he requested that we impose an actual rate instead of a standard rate because there are different kinds of encroachment permits. Some can be complex, some can be simple. And sorry, my mouth is getting really dry for some reason.
Don't worry about it. I think we need to hear it. I think Ms. Baker, particularly, you don't mind the figures, do you? You don't mind her going over the figures.
Oh, no, I.
No, that's fine. Don't worry about it.
My mouth is just getting dry.
No.
Well, I meant my mouth physically, but yeah, thank you. And
I'm good, thank you.
we also have encroachment agreements, which are different than encroachment permits. Permits are usually 1 day encroachments, whereas agreements can be ongoing. So that's another reason Matt wants to do an actual rate, because they can take different amounts of time for staff.
And by actual, you mean the hours it takes Matt
Yes.
and Ben?
Yes.
Okay.
The hours that it takes staff. So staff would log their time working on these encroachment permits or agreements. We have a we have a deposit form so we can estimate our time. Thank you. And then we can charge the applicant those fees.
Okay.
And of course, all of this is open for discussion. This is just a proposal. I wanted to start somewhere. So any feedback is appreciated. In terms of park reservations, we're currently charging $25 per reservation. And we would like to propose $100 to cover costs for
Not
maintenance.
to interrupt, but we do waive park reservations for schools.
Mhm.
So if Grenada School comes in and wants to do a lunch at Greenhorn Park, we normally waive that fee for them.
Mhm.
Schools, no, I'm doing
Yeah,
it at the park.
yeah.
Not a trick question.
I was all,
Not a trick question.
I think that's a good point because like within the context of this packet, from what I've seen, it states very bizarre language. The first 5 days of the school year, the cost will be waived and thereafter will be only 50% of the cost. So it's
Yeah.
but we should, because internally we may be doing something differently because next, because this is from 2004. Is that correct?
Most of these are from 2004. Also, the language that you're reading is specifically for the community center and community
okay,
theater. We don't
okay.
have anything written or passed for the parks.
But I do think that we should consider that we would waive, like we need, that's what we need to do is consider in whatever the policy we come up with here for the cost, exactly what Emily's pointing out,
Okay.
like is there like schools, should
Yeah.
we just not have
or
a
is
fee?
it, hey, Pop Warner wants to use the Minor Street
Yeah,
park are we waiving that? Are we not? Like,
Yeah.
I think in the past we have waived the reservation fee for flag football.
Well, that's why we're here, is to figure that out. And we're not gonna figure it out today. I think it's gonna be something that we're gonna meet on. Perhaps we may meet on it again, and then at some point in time, Ms. Baker, excuse me, and I will take something back to the council, and then the council will give us their input on it, and then we'll probably have to come back. But the reason I would say, without knowing not been around the city, the reason that probably schools were waived is because many of the schools in the Yreka Union District and the Yreka High School District used to have beginning of the year picnics that we were required to go to as adults, as staff. And that could be part of it. Because I will tell you that as far as kids go, we're not going to use the parks. Teachers aren't at the beginning of the year. We're going to use them at the end of the year. We're going to use them in the last 5 or 6 days. Don't get me started why. I can tell you that. I can talk to you about that off the record.
Because it's summer fever.
Yeah, yeah. I can talk about that off the record. But so that may be why. But I do think we probably need to, and I think I may be in agreement. You and I may be in agreement. We need to kind of make this as much equal as possible. The fee usage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm out.
so actually I do have a question then. So we're proposing on the very first 2 lines, there's special events. We're proposing that there is just a deposit. And then we're proposing that it be $500. I'm confused, I
So
guess.
the first line for special event
Mhm.
is what's currently in place that we should be charging for special events, a $500 deposit.
Okay.
And we reviewed the parades last time and saw that they're costing us thousands of dollars. And Colleen, I know you wanted to see the costs for Gold Rush Days and Night of Lights. You'll see those attached as the last 2 pages.
Thank you.
So Night of Lights, $1,106.21, mainly Public Works Department staff time. And Gold Rush Days, just under $1,600. So with that in mind, I proposed a $500 per day fee for special events if we want to cover any portion of those costs for special events. And like I said, it's all open for discussion. None of this is a hard request or anything. So
This is definitely just getting the conversation started.
mhm.
These we're aware can be sensitive fees because it's, good things for our community, and we want people to use our center. That's why we have it available. So definitely these are not hard and fast, but we wanted to just kind of start the ball rolling of trying to cover costs a little better. Because obviously in the last 20 years, things have cost more.
Mm-hmm.
Darn it.
And I really appreciate this. I think that we all need to have an understanding when we are waiving fees, exactly what it is that we're waiving, what the
Yes.
actual cost is to the city. So I appreciate this.
And the last line, we have a building at Greenhorn. Matt calls it the Greenhorn kiosk. That is a usable space for events that we don't really offer to the community for rental. And Matt proposed that we start making it available at $125.
Is that
listed in here? Oh, that is.
Greenhorn
under
kiosk.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I know when I had my 30th birthday about 5-6 years ago at Greenhorn, we also used the kiosk. I don't think we were charged anything. We may have put a deposit down, but we just had a little party with about 20 people. So, but you're talking about that really sweet log cabin that Stan Whitlow built
Yes.
that we used to use for Mike Dunlap when we were still doing what's it called? The bike ride. It's when they still gave away the last year or two. They gave away gold. Actually gold nugget. What's a Siskiyou Humbug Hurry Up? Yeah, that's a sweet building. Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I think Matt put power into it today, or not today, but it has power at it as well. So if
I think it's always
people need to
It's
plug in or something.
I'm sorry. Continue.
So I just want to make sure that I understand what the kiosk is. So is it at Upper Greenhorn, and it's got the windows that look like fast food windows, that you could walk up to?
I think so. I think it's the one, and I think Mr. McCoy knows, but I think when you cross over the bridge, it's the building directly to your left. Is that correct? Because the other one is the bathrooms. And so, yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, none of these fees in this top matrix, they all seem reasonable to me. And I guess that's kind of what I would like to point out with the group is, does something stand out here that's just absolutely inappropriate that we should really discuss? And so, and do we know the context here? So I am going to have a birthday party at Minor Street Park. And today it's only going to be a 4-hour event. I would pay $25 to reserve the park or a portion of the park or Greenhorn Park, right? And get my little location. And now we're saying that's going to be $50. And we're currently only charging $25 for the entire day for the reservation. And now we're going to $100. And then it is true, because I know I would think I was confused on resolution 2470, but all of these current fees are roughly at least 20 years old. Is that kind of what
These
like?
Exactly.
So
Okay.
well,
I think
the ones in the top, I could not find a resolution
Okay.
or ordinance for, except for our complex encroachment permit, which was incorporated into the building and planning fee update last year.
Okay.
But the other ones I referred to our current applications
Okay.
that people fill out.
And then just so I can be clear too, is that, and this is how we work here, folks, is just talk, until it makes sense to everybody. So it's not, just so I can better understand. Right now, what we're saying is, hey, yeah, there's a cost to shut the road. There's a cost, I'm going to I want to do an event on Minor Street, and then all these fees come across, right? And it's like, okay, we need the overtime rigs and all this closure is going to cost you $787, Jason. But beyond that, there's also just the basic fee, and that's going to be $500 on top of whatever those extra costs are. So just a special event is $500. Is that accurate?
That is what I'm proposing here.
Yeah, that's,
And these
I just want to,
encroachment fees go beyond special events. So this would apply to any other project in the city as well, which is why it's kind of an odd placement for the encroachment permits.
Yeah.
But encroachment permits also apply to special events.
But like I'm doing a big event. I'm getting the stage. that's gonna cost, like today, that's gonna cost me $250. I'm
Mhm.
closing the road and I got the math
Mhm.
back from the city. It's $1,100. And beyond that, because that's just recouping the cost of things. That's not your time or staff's time engaging in the process of the permit, the application. You will also be charged like in this matrix, $500 just to have your event.
Yes.
Okay.
So my question is, how can we justify the 500, just the $500 if we are charging also for the cost of the encroachment permit?
Yeah, that's a good point that I honestly didn't really consider while I was doing this. So that's kind of why I wanted to have this
It would have
meeting.
been, yeah, it would have been my assumption. It's for Alia's time to track
Yeah.
down their liability insurance, to organize, to make sure that Ben, so it's
That'd be
more of our
logical.
admin time
Yeah.
that
okay.
we're not recouping at the moment, because we wouldn't recoup time for Alia to put the packet together, take it in front of council, take it to, you know, so it's those costs would be
Okay.
for the 500. That was my
Yeah.
assumption when I was looking at this.
Which
Yeah.
I think we could go back and rationalize that out. And I guess that's what the whole point of having this conversation is. I think I kind of agree with, I think where Miss Baker's going is like, can we put a spreadsheet together to say the average event takes this much effort by staff? So whatever that is, and then your salary with benefits
Mhm.
and
Right.
applied to those hours, because it is more than just what people think. Person comes in, they need to get sat down and talked with, right? Because
Yep.
they don't understand the process. Then they gather their stuff, they come back in, they have half of the information that's needed, right? And then
Guaranteed.
they're
At
wanting
most.
to know why we're so difficult. And then
Happens a lot.
and then we are working with them to try to get their insurance, sometimes going to our own insurance provider to like
Yeah.
figure out how we can help get them insured. But then you have to put a packet together to come to city council, which
Mhm.
takes time, right? And so I think it's
Yeah.
probably, we could probably prove that it's even more expensive than that, but
I was
I
I
would
was just
yeah.
about to say that if we did take all of my time for each event, it would definitely be more than 500.
Which is totally
for
fine.
sure.
I think it just rationalizes that we're still subsidizing, right?
Yes.
And I think that's what people inevitably, when we do come to council, will want to show that. So that's what I would suggest, is that we go do some math on that particular number.
Mhm.
The rest of them look fine to me, but I will let
Mhm.
everybody else kind of chime in. Just on the first top matrix is what I'm looking at, but
Yeah, and maybe either one of you can speak to this, but it's my experience, my understanding when it comes to fees, we can only charge what the actual cost is. We can't
charge more than what the cost is. We can subsidize it if we so choose.
Right. So I think it would be really important to break those down so that we know exactly what the cost is, because my guess is probably going to be more than $500.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets spendy fast. Time is money.
Especially
Yeah.
when you put in the indirect costs.
Yeah.
Include the indirect costs, which I always used to do when I did my fee schedules.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Hogan, did you want to add to this?
No, it's been long overdue. There's just a lot of community pressure and expectations that these are community facilities and that whole.
Freebies.
So one time we did raise the park reservation fees, and they just forego making reservations and just used it anyway, and ended up clean up and some frustrating conflicts because they all want to use it, but nobody had a reservation on peak periods like high school graduation and stuff like that.
I could see that happening.
But
Easily.
you know, and that's, you know, it's just but they're long overdue. I think this is great. Step forward and survive our facilities, but
Yeah, they cost money to maintain and upkeep.
Right, exactly.
And, you know, you make a park reservation. You got to fill out the reservation signs. The guys have to go over and post them up for them.
Yeah.
Make sure it's cleaned up. Like they do a walkthrough of the park. They make sure there's not, trash all over, and they make sure it's.
Rinse tables,
Yep.
clean tables. Yeah, so. And I think you mentioned, Alia, that 2004, which would be about 20 years, but I think that some of these may go back longer than that from my time in Rotary. I mean, some of these may have not been changed for quite a while. So they may have gone longer, maybe not as far back as having the horse troughs in front of your store that we just changed, but they may go back 25, 30 years or so. So, I think it's important to start this discussion. And I'm thankful that Mrs. Baker has started the discussion. Councilwoman Baker started the discussion. So do you want to go ahead and you want to proceed?
Yeah. So the next kind of block is the community center. And I've also included a community center revenues and expenses attachment these are estimated revenues and expenses based on building attendance, time, staff time, and estimated supplies, and like what we actually charge. So I've highlighted in green estimated kind of surpluses. Orange will be where we're losing a bit of money. Or yellow is where we're losing $1 to $50. Orange is $50 to $150 lost or not recovered. And red is $150 plus. So I broke these down from 2, 4, 6, 8, 16-hour rentals. Most people use the community center all day, 8 a.m. to midnight with setup. So that's why I included a 16-hour all day rental, where I just want to make clear we don't offer time blocks right now, but I wanted to give an estimate of how much these different time blocks might cost the city in terms of staff time, etc. And as you can see, as we get into the longer rentals for our facilities, we start kind of not recovering hundreds of dollars. So that's just kind of some context for these next fees. Again, we've adjusted these fees for inflation. So from 2004, most of these were passed in 2004. That's when they were set. So I've updated them to 2023 December costs, and those are the fees that you see in the proposed fee section. So we're going from 50 to 90, 75 to 135, 100 to 175. For the full center, it gets more expensive, from 250 to 450, 300 to 525, 350 to 600 for the different levels of full center rentals. And Emily suggested that we also research other communities' fees for their facilities, their parks and community center facilities. So I've attached those as exhibits C, D, E, F, and G, I believe. So that's Montague, Dunsmuir, Mount Shasta, Ashland, and Medford. And these are also, each city sets up their fee schedule differently. The city of Montague charges a really high deposit, $800, and that is why we propose to increase our current deposit amount. It's $100, and we proposed increasing it to $500 because people often aren't incentivized to actually clean up after their events. They'll leave the trash overflowing, so Madrone isn't able to use the dumpsters, etc. Toilets get clogged, sinks get clogged, things like that. You'll see Dunsmuir has in-district and out-of-district fees. So it's cheaper if you're living in the city than outside of the city. Mount Shasta is similar. They have different categories for different types of organizations renting their facilities. And you'll see that other cities' fees are significantly higher than our current fees. Like in Exhibit F, Ashland, they have a $75 fee for 4 hours for their outdoor facilities, but those are very small facilities. Those are very small areas of parks. Whereas when we rent our parks, it's all of Greenhorn, all of Minor Park. So the scale is different. And then Exhibit G, Medford, just another example. And we wanted to bring those to you to kind of show our justification for these fees and also to demonstrate other options if you don't like the way this proposal is organized, or if you would like to propose just a different organization, like different rates for residents versus non-residents, etc.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in because I think this is a interesting subject. If everything worked out in my head over the next 10 years, these would all be subsidized fees. There would be no fees to use any of these things, in a perfect world. And so just because something costs, I just want to remind this group, just because something costs something to use does not mean we're saying you need to charge that fee. But I think what is helpful is it would help us if we do want to subsidize that mathematically on the application, we could show the community how much we're actually giving them for a less cost. I'm not saying you can't charge what it does actually cost. And most of it, I think, is maintenance. I think that's like somebody breaks the toilet, right? Something happens and we don't know who did it at what event. So we can't apply that. But now we have this cost, or somebody vandalizes some of the equipment within one of these spaces. And so I just want to remind everyone that these are malleable things, and we have to recognize our community may not be able to afford some of these costs, but that maybe there's a waiver for that as well. So nothing's set in stone here, but we'd like to show you what things do actually cost, but that doesn't mean you have to charge the community. That is just my point.
That's a good point. And you all can decide, we want to recover 50% of these costs, 60%, 80%. This is, yes, a good just starting point for reference.
If we were to do this, I would like to see it. When CPI was released this week or just last week, I think it's about what did you see, Jason? 2.8, something like that %. It's high. Again, the federal government's hoping it would be down the 2s. It's not. It's somewhere close to 3. I think we should be tied to the CPI. Maybe tied to the PPI. I don't care. PPI is wholesale. CPI is retail. But I think we need to be tied to one or the other for an annual update. It doesn't mean you're going to raise it. Again, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean you have to raise it 2.8%. You can say we'll raise it half of CPI. But I just think because if we're going to rely on other councils, like when I'm gone and it's you and Drake and Corey and whoever else is here, this takes up a lot of time for you to do this, even if it's every 4 years.
Yeah, you're raising an interesting point. And on airport leases, by the time I got to general services, that they were finalizing this new airport lease. And they did something called a CAF, the County Adjustment Factor, based off of the trailing 5 years of CPI. And then we would update these fees based off the CAF every 5 years or every 3 years, or in perpetuity, you would be approving the CPI increases, and we would not be coming back to you. Maybe within a resolution passing this, it would just state we will reevaluate every 3 years, but we will apply the CPI, SFO, whatever, to these costs, and they will just on this date be increased by that amount. Because I believe you are correct. This can eat up a lot of time, and then what happens is it does not come back, and then things just kind of fade. And so I agree with you. If that is a concern, we like that in finance, where the increase is just built into the original vote.
And I'm not wedded to any index, just whatever.
I think historically we use the CCI, correct?
use the CCI?
I think it could easily be blended into your master fee schedule and which you still need to bring forward because of the cost of labor and things like that that you review. So you could
Yeah.
also include it in your annual master fee
Annual
schedule along with the planning fees and all that, and just have a comprehensive adjustment on that. Automatic fee increases, I'm understanding, I could be wrong, still require council review on things when there's a nexus for services for that.
So we probably need to look into that and make sure,
Yeah, I think that's why we come back, or
yeah,
why Emily and Juliana set forth that annual fee review process, but we can
Yeah.
follow up on that.
But I think that it's interesting, and I think there could be verbiage and direction, kind of guidance for future councils where you could say within the policy, we'll bring it back every year, and our intention is to see the increases from CCI or CPI or whatever. That way,
yeah.
making it smoother annually.
Thank you. Go proceed, Alia. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
So I just have a couple of thoughts that I would like to put out on the table. And I knew this was going to happen. As soon as I said that, I'm like, okay, what are those thoughts? One of the things that I have noticed since being on council is that they're really, for whatever reason, it's not even important, but it's like there's no maintenance or very little maintenance of any of the city owned buildings. And I think that is good justification, especially with the community theater and the community center, that we may have a somewhat stricter policy in place with regard to waiving fees versus events. Because at some point in time, well, we need to replace roofs and HVAC systems, and we need to replace stages. So I think that is a good justification for charging what it's actually costing us. And then the other thing that I have such a hard time, and forgive me, wrapping my head around is, where does this money come from that we're, where's the $1,500 coming from when we waive all of our fees for
General
an
fund.
event?
General fund, yeah.
And I know that it comes from the general fund, but I'm just so comfortable with boxes. And I just would like to toss out, Councilman McCoy, for your consideration, is that perhaps we set a limit as a council per year of how much that we're willing to spend this year on community events. And once that money is gone, that money is gone. I know that we've had a partial discussion about this in the past, but at the first of the year, just put out an announcement that, the city of Wairika has $15,000 that we would love to share with people for community events. Submit your ideas, proposals by February 1st, and then we'll take them on. I just have a hard time. I just have a hard time waiving fees completely anyway, but that's me.
This is why we're here, though. When you say this is why we're here to talk about this.
Yeah, and it's so much easier to stand behind a council approved policy when we tell someone this is the price. I'm sorry, we
Right.
can't do anything about it. But I think that you are correct. I mean, we would like to get to that point with you guys, and actually within the context of the finance committee, I think that's where this needs to come out of, because Emily and I are getting approached about multiple people wanting donations, and some of those donations make sense. Like I met with the person that runs SNP and Don Mariatri here. And for me, I see a real need as kind of facilitating animal control within the city, that the city should be giving a donation to certain organizations because they fulfill functions that otherwise would cost us a lot of money to fulfill. And that is spay and neuter and trapping, kind of similar to what happened in Fort Jones or what happened in Weed with, either Rescue Ranch, SNP, and Per Angels for me are like they're facilitating something that normally would be very expensive for us. So that would make a lot of sense. But we also have the high school football team wanting a donation to go on a trip to Alaska to participate in their first game of the year. And on paper, that sounds great. But then you start thinking, well, what about the soccer team? What about the volleyball team? What about the softball team? And what about basketball? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, we gave X and now everybody's coming in here. So I think that that's what I would love to see is this group basically going into the budget, really talk about community funds like you're stating, and then also donations to nonprofits and kind of capping how much we would like, and then giving the council the ability to choose which organizations or invite people here to make requests for funding. But to have a cap, right? To have a line item within the budget, because what you say right now, where does the money come from? Primarily it comes from Public Works because we don't bill back a special line item. So when we hemorrhage money out, it comes out of parks most of the time, or it comes out of roads because it's Ben Miller shutting the road down with this crew, and it's Ben Miller cleaning up the location after hours or whatever it is. And it just never really actually gets applied to the correct location. So other people in the community lose because then we don't have enough money to pothole something, or we don't have enough money to do some level of maintenance at the park.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just really comfortable with, we have $25,000 as an example. And once that money is gone for the year, it's gone.
That's actually how Weed runs their every January. They say, okay, we have X amount of dollars and everybody has to come and bring a proposal at one meeting. And they sit there and they divvy up how much they're going to give to each organization, and including Public Works. Public Works petitions them to say, hey, this is how much it's going to cost us to do these events for you. And they get a piece of that money as well.
I would love, and I know Don Murray's got a comment, but I would love that to have the city council give this organization, this commission, the authority to do that, and then bring back that finished product to the city council. That way we're not doing that in a city council meeting, and we can invite people in, and it's a little bit more informal here, but I know that.
Yeah. Thank you, Don Marie.
Hang on, sorry. I apologize again.
I don't know if you're gonna hear me.
But I will just wanted to real quickly on Miss Baker that said something that, like, technically, if we go and look at the deferred maintenance costs of the community center and the long-term cost to re-roof, re-side, do the actual maintenance, I mean, that's our problem on a multitude of things that have happened in the past here, is that that was the big conversation over the pool, the maintenance costs, and how do we fund every year. We should be sending money into a maintenance account that the first 10 years of that building doesn't really require anything. But if you only put $60,000 every year and that's your maintenance and it doesn't roll over, well, when it's time to do the roof, that's $500,000. That $60,000 isn't going to do anything for you. So I agree. That's something that this over time, as we add new facilities, we need to be very clear, because we're going to have the pool come back. We need to be very clear within the budget. It's not just the cost to reconstruct this thing, it's the cost to maintain it. And what are we doing on an annual basis to guarantee that money going into an account that sits there only for use on the pool in the future, or whatever building we're talking about.
Go ahead, Don Marie.
Giving away money, like and it was put on the consent agenda for the Cattlemen's Association or Women's Association. They got hundreds, thousands actually dollars from that event that we gave them free. And I tried saying, we do Night of Lights because it is a city event, and it hasn't actually, because nobody seems to have the cojones to actually say, yeah, it's a city event. None of the council members. So we need to start working on that. Night of Lights is a city event. It's always been a city event forever. And the Christmas parade too. It should be one event, should be the same day. Gold Rush. If that isn't a city event, why do we have a gold miner as our logo? I mean, seriously, it gets frustrating. Those events, yes, they are going to be covered by us, of course. Nothing else should be covered by us. Nothing. They're not city events. They should have nothing to do with us. Why are we paying for it? Why are citizens bleeding money? That's what you are all here for, citizens. And that's our money. And I'm not happy with it bleeding out. And yeah, you know, I am happy with giving it to organizations that will help with the animal control. Because, you know, we are hip deep in dogs and cats around here. We need to spay and neuter. It needs to be mandatory. But the only way to do that is to subsidize these places that are going to fix animals. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell everybody that earlier today I did receive from Heather at Discover Siskiyou a submission to do a number of events that they already do, but also in addition, the concert in the park series. And so we will be looking at that, and that will be coming back to possibly this group or maybe just straight to city council. But Don Marie does raise an interesting point, is that it is kind of convoluted as to what event is a city event. And I agree with Don Marie, because when I was tasked to race to get Gold Rush Days going, to race to get Night of Lights, to race to go get a holiday parade, that in and of itself inferred that it was also all of a sudden my responsibility. So it was a city event. It's like, I'm not racing to do a beer and brew and beef and brew or whatever, right? So it's like, I do agree. I mean, I think that would be interesting as well, as to basically just dictate, these are city events. They're completely subsidized. We're not going to worry about it. And then everyone else, just, I'm sorry, but you have to pay. And if you can't pay, then I guess you really don't have an event, do you? You know, I mean, or a grant opportunity. Someone wants to start an event such as Beef and Brew, and they don't really know if it's going to be successful, but now they're going into year 2, we're subsidizing their cost, and maybe over time we start saying, okay, at year 3, you're very successful. These costs now become applied to you. Your time to prove yourself is you've proved yourself.
And I don't disagree with you or with Don Marie, but I can remember when we didn't have Gold Rush Days here. We didn't have it. I wasn't here when I was at Jackson Street as vice principal. It started because the chamber decided they wanted to start it. As far as the parade, it has been here, and that was always a chamber event. It was no Iriki event. I'm not saying it can't be. I'm just saying we look historically. And as far as the Night of Lights wasn't, when I moved here in #86, we didn't have Night of Lights.
Right.
We didn't have it. These, I mean, they're fairly new for this Flatlander. So, I mean, that's fine. We pick and choose what we want to subsidize. But then again, what we need to do is say, like I would say for those 3, if we could put away about $75,000, $80,000 for those 3 events, I would say we're fine, just as long as we recognize as a council that we're going to subsidize those. Then I would agree with you that we don't subsidize anything else.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess what I'll say to you, Mr. McCoy.
Oh
is,
no!
What my retort back to you is, okay, then I'll stop working with people to make sure those events happen, and then we'll just miraculously have people come in here and submit applications to do Night of Lights. Because when that did not happen, I was forced to run out there and make it happen, right? And so the point is that those are obviously city events. The chamber was a wing of the city council, right? I mean, it's like, it's always been that way. You know, we have city council members advocating to bring the chamber back. It's not the business community advocating to bring the chamber back. It's the council. So there's just too much of a gray area here where I think we do need to delineate what is a city event. If there is no city event, my life gets a lot easier. I think the community loses personally, though.
And I am not saying I'm not saying no that you do it. I'm saying that if we put out 100,000 to have um somebody put on Night of Lights or somebody put, where we help, we put it out for the Elks or whoever's going to do it. I don't want to give them $1,000 or $2,000 for their coffers because I don't think that's appropriate. But I'm just saying if we have that amount of money, that's what we're going to use to put these on. I'm not asking you to, because I don't think it's anybody in that office's job. Your job in there is to make sure I got clean water, cops, sewer. I'm not going to go into potholes but streets and street lights and all that kind of stuff. That's your job, because I'll guarantee you that the person whose street light goes out is going to be madder than the person who doesn't get to go to Night of Lights. I can guarantee it, because I get their calls at home. I get the calls on potholes. I get, and all that stuff. And why can't we build more houses like during the moratorium when we didn't have the effluent, we didn't have the sewer. We had to redo the sewer about, I don't know, 20 years ago. But no, I think this is good discussion. I don't disagree with anything that anybody is saying. I think we're having an open discussion, and I think we're moving forward, but I think it's going to take a little bit of time. And I don't think we can charge, like if Paul McCoy wants to put on the Paul McCoy parade once a year on January 2nd, and maybe the cost is $3,000, but Alia may have it lined out and the council approves that you only have to pay $1,800. Paul McCoy needs to pay $1,800. I mean, we're not gonna be able to cover, go ahead. We're not gonna be able to cover the whole cost, I don't think.
Yeah, I think this conversation is, it's integral to this document, but I also think we probably should just start focusing on the document. But I do think that there is a conversation to be had about maybe the city should have a parade. And then maybe we should take away the responsibility from the schools to have a Halloween parade, right? Like maybe we should just say, this is the date the parade will happen. We are shutting the road down and all of you can participate in it. Rather than, if you don't want to do that, then you need to pay the actual cost to do it. But beyond that, I think we're veering off from all the work that Alia did. So I go back to just like the matrix and looking at the numbers.
That's fine. I think it's all relevant. The next couple. So we've gone through, have we gone through the community theater? I believe we finished the community center. So community theater is the same thing. Everything's adjusted for inflation. The current fees were set in 2004. So the proposed fees are higher. We changed the piano tuning fee to be the actual fee because we don't really know if it's $100.
Actual fee is going to be $225 to $250 today to tune a piano.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I just point out one fee on the community center?
Yes.
I like that you added the $60 fee for the trash for people over 75. Because with Madrone being in there, and then the guys have to go over and pick up whatever extra trash so that Madrone still has room. It's definite. I think it's needed.
Thanks for pointing that out. I forgot to highlight it because I added it at the last minute because we had an issue last week with exactly that. Madrone didn't have enough space for their trash by a long shot. It was falling on the ground. So we, Gail, our building technician, did some research and we found that it's $60 to do an extra trash pickup either the Friday before or the Monday after a weekend. So that's why I added that. And I said 75 people because that seems like a significant number to me, enough to fill up a trash bin. And then at the bottom, you'll see I proposed a higher cleaning deposit to incentivize people to keep the community center a bit cleaner after events. So
do we have building attendants listed on here?
Yeah, just above cleaning deposit. We're currently charging $10 per hour for their time when their time costs $25 per hour. So we're losing $15 per hour on that.
Okay.
So yeah, and community theater, it's the same process. of the fee increases. I also added a cleaning deposit for the community theater. Or no, it was $100, but increased it to 500. And the next page just has the school fee schedule to imitate the 2004 fee schedule that was put in place for schools. But it sounds like there's another conversation to be had about when fees are waived for schools, etc.
I don't think the high school would need to rent the theaters often anymore now that they've converted the old gym to the theater, right? I've never actually been in there, so I have no idea what it looks like in there.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. Between Seiler, Steve Young, and Mike Hendricks, it's gorgeous. They're putting in new seating and everything. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
So that's the last page of the fee schedule proposal. Everything else, the exhibits are the other cities' fee schedules and the resolution 2470. So I'll just go back to what I have on the staff report, and the requested action is just to know what next steps are, what direction do we want to go in, what do we want to discuss at the next finance committee meeting, taking all of this information into account.
Well, for one thing, it sounded like Councilwoman Baker would like to know what the costs are on encroachments. So she'd like you to kind of fundamentally as you can break that down. We do want to make sure that we are, that we're not like if you're thinking it'll cost me $50 to do this and you go, oh no, it costs me $150, we want to make sure we're not, too low,
Right.
that you're not basing something on something that's lower.
Can I say one thing about the
Yes, ma'am.
encroachments?
Yes,
It
ma'am.
might be, it's possible, but because encroachment permits and agreements can be so different, depending on the project, it might be a lot or several different scenarios, but it won't really account for all of the possible scenarios.
We also talked about the $500 of what is your time
Yes,
per
that
event.
too.
Do that as a breakdown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not intimating that you don't do $500 worth of work. What I'm intimating probably is the opposite, that you might do $1,200 worth of work on.
Probably.
Yeah. Or you might
Or
be
more.
averaging $750 on each one. And we just kind of need to be as fair as possible. But fairness goes both ways. We have, in order to keep up those buildings and the different things, we need to be able to make sure that we're getting money in, and then doing as Mr. Ledbetter talked about, and this council has talked about, I don't know, it's this council, the last council, but capital outlay accounts for things like stages and things for when they go, and for roofs, or for, like you said, I call it capital outlay because that's what we called it in education. I don't know what we call it in city. We had capital outlay to put a new air conditioner in, or capital outlay, we had to budget for that.
Yeah, we've never really had the capital to do the replacement fund or vehicle replacement fund or
Yeah.
your pension debt servicing
Oh,
funds.
yes.
Okay.
So you're probably, if you were to do a financial disclosure of marginalized assets, it probably would be pretty shocking. But
Okay.
it's kind of the report card on the whole USA
Yes.
and infrastructure right now. Yeah.
Yes.
We have a development impact fee for parks or recreation.
We do.
We do.
It's
Okay.
it's dated to 2006 and has had a COLA historically applied to it until this year.
Okay.
I want to ask a question. This is a technical question. I'm going to address it to Ms. Hogan. So the diff fee is tied to some kind of a price increase or decrease depending on the economy for a park.
So there was a study that identified the capital outlay needed, and
Mhm.
then we've worked on some subsequent things that have come up on that capital outlay. But the fee, and really the only contributions to DIF on Parker are single family residential. Those are the primary contributions to the park fee. So as you know, there hasn't been a lot of single family residential historically
Built.
to contribute to that, but it's either for expansion or of facilities or impacts to facilities attributable to growth, which
Okay.
could be higher volume use and things like that.
Okay, yeah. And when we do, I'm gonna ask everybody this. I can only compare it with, like, I have a brother in Irvine, a brother in San Diego, a brother in Yuma. Whenever somebody comes in and builds a housing tract, whether it's 10 houses or whether it's 1,000 houses, they are required by the state of Arizona and the state of California to give land to the city for parks. And if it's a large, if it's 500 units or 300 units, they may be 2 or 3 parks in there. Is that a requirement that we have? Like if somebody wanted to come in and build 20 or 30 homes, and it is? Okay.
Yeah, depending on how big their project is, will dictate the acreage size of the park, and I believe they have to actually develop the park, essentially.
Yes. Okay, so panel, where do we want to go? I'm looking at you, Mrs. Baker, all as well. I'm sorry.
Can I point something out for you?
Where do we want to go with this?
These events, they do not include any police. So usually, I believe,
Oh.
mark up like staffs. They don't note it on their time card. So it was hard for us to like justify how much of their
Yeah.
time would have been spent at Night of Lights. But I know Mark always sends, 1 or 2 guys that go through and walk the event, and so he usually runs more people on those days, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say that we would maybe get with Chief Gilman and get just an understanding of what his overtime or community service officer reserves are, and are we when Beef and Brews going on, right? Or are we adding an officer, Gold Rush Days, all that stuff?
I did reach out to Mark Gilman, and he said that they had no staff at these events this year. So I'm not sure if that was just this year or I specifically asked for overtime hours. So maybe he thought because like he didn't report any overtime hours. So yeah, we can clarify.
Okay. I usually see them there. But yeah,
So,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
that's
Maybe if he
interesting that-
didn't.
Yeah.
So this goes out to the city manager and the assistant city manager. Could we somehow figure in that if YHS or Evergreen School or somebody does not want to use our plan, they must pay for their own engineered plan? Because I do not want to pay for it.
Yeah, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot with doing that, and we did that. And last year, we had somebody come back. One of the schools came back, and they got their engineered plan. They got their engineered parade route, and it just happened to have 60 crossings. And we learned the hard way that we didn't have staff for that. And so ultimately, I think we want to get away from that. We'll want to discuss that within the context of these meetings. Is we probably should really just go back to the parade route that we've already approved and say that's all you can do. And we won't approve any other route because we're the ones that have to shut the road down and make sure everybody is safe. And so I think it was a real nightmare with Public Works.
Yeah, we also don't have that much equipment. We don't have that many cones for all of those street closures.
Oh, I sat in. I've never seen them go that route before, and in 40 years living here and cross all those streets, and I couldn't believe how the cops and they had every personnel, every city truck was hopping from one. They went boom, boom, boom because I was trying to get home, and it was blocking every street trying to get up Gold Street. So, okay, that's kind of. Then I'll withdraw that comment.
So, I really appreciate that we're getting some. I mean, it's been so long since the fees have been updated. I think that it's just critical that we're really getting some current information. And along with that, I would like to see this committee begin to develop some recommendations to take to the city council with regard to an agreement. What are the community events? Realistic numbers on budgeting. And I love the idea of donating, especially to personally SNP and Per Angels, and also a policy on, well, Don Mariatri put it really well. I mean, why are we subsidizing nonprofits that are putting on a for-profit event? And so maybe putting together some ideas for policies for us to at least begin a discussion on, and just be able to sit like this and have a back and forth discussion of the pros and cons, so that when we do take a policy to the city council, it's very well thought out. And, you know, anything can go sideways at the council level, but at least we've put in our best effort.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, I think next time we talk about this, maybe we can kind of separate the item out and talk about those things. I mean, I could already tell you that for me, if we're going to have city events and we're going to say those city events are Night of Lights, the holiday parade, Gold Rush Days, which now I think Discover Siskiyou is kind of calling, like, maybe can we call that a heritage event rather than Gold Rush Days to get more participation. The Concert in the Park series, right? Mm-hmm. To me, that's the city hiring an event planner, and we know that's not going to happen, right? And so the next best thing is Discover Siskiyou, and that's where I think there's a difference here. There's a totally philosophical difference where we're not advocating that a nonprofit come in and take on an event of that magnitude, right, because we just think that needs to be a little bit more polished. And so with this scope of work, I think I'll bring it into the next meeting. You know, we'll throw it on the agenda and we'll show you what Discover Siskiyou is telling us that they would like to do. And then we can flesh out also the policy on what we're not going to do for people, I think.
Can we make a distinction? Because I think everything that we're talking about is wonderful. I think it's great, and I think we need to talk about it. For our next meeting, can we put the donations to 501c3s and other nonprofits up for another whole discussion? Because I don't really see that being a part of this discussion. In addition to that, I think we need to decide. I think what we're deciding here is where we're going with community events. That's what I see it as far as what we're charging, because they're all community events. If we're calling them a city event, does that mean it's city sponsored? Is that what that means? And if so, what's the definition of city sponsored? And I'm not trying to be a lawyer. We got Andrew, he can confuse us enough, but I'm just trying to make sure that our wording is clear to the citizens of Yreka, because they're going to say, well, this is a city event. I put on I close Minor Street 5 times a year and do stuff, and I put out $14,000 for it and blah, 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 blah. That's so, I think we have some things to clear up while we're doing this, but I'd like to break out the donations, which I think is a fabulous idea that you guys have, but to another time.
Well, I think we're going to have another meeting here very quickly, and it's going to be really focused on somebody's wanting to do an event, I think. But we can have, I understand what you're saying, but I also think we can have one meeting with multiple items that are separated. And that way we can talk about your item and then also talk about the nonprofit giveaway, item as well.
And I'm fine if we're prepared to spend the time and not get up and leave the meeting early. I'm fine with that, but I'm not fine with it because I think this is going to take more time for us to iron out than we think. And I'm not going to disagree with you there, but if we can't commit the time to be here for the whole meeting, in case it is a 2 or 3 hour meeting, because I think it will be, I think by the time we get through all of this and all of this, we need to define a lot of things, and we're doing very good things, but we have to commit to be here. If we're going to, not to have other things going on that afternoon or evening that we meet. So.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think we got to stay on track with all the hard work that Alia is putting in here. I will just say that we can come back and staff internally can sit down. Maybe we can sit down and just write up some bullet points on clarifying really a city event, right? Well, Jason's going to rent the community center because I'm going to put on my event. Nobody would say that was a city event, but things do get weird when I rent Minor Street. And that, I think that's the difference, right? It's like I am having an event on public property. It just happens to be the street. So we will sit down and probably curate exactly what everyone already hit or has already heard, which is going to be the Discover Siskiyou submission, which I am claiming those are city events. And because I do think we need a policy at council level to agree with that statement or disagree. And then they would fall under the regular event, and whatever policy we hold people accountable for, people would, whoever's putting on that event would have to pay for it. So
I'd like to thank Mrs. Baker for bringing this up in council, and I would like to thank Alia for all her hard work. And
Yes.
we do appreciate the figures, and you know, we want to thank you for that. So we have a meeting coming up. What's our next meeting?
The 26th.
Okay. And what's that?
26th. Oh, sorry. No, I don't know off the top of my head. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And so at that time, we will be bringing these things back. The fee schedules, city sponsored or city events. We're gonna have one community event, right? That's gonna propose at that time.
So I do, because we have two special guests for that meeting. I don't know. Do we want to bring that all back at the same time?
I highly suggest that this is a long process, and I would rather wait for like at least 4 more weeks, because what we're going to discuss at the next meeting is going to be not contentious, but we're going to have people here that would like to do an event. And so I think it's going to take a lot of time to flesh that out in a positive way. I think we would not have a constructive meeting discussing this topic at the next meeting.
That's my fear.
And it's very short notice anyway. It's less than 2 weeks from now, correct? It's 11 days from today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think with everything else we have going on, I think we just kind of confine it to what the original meeting was. But then whatever you just stated, Pro Tem McCoy, we just tack on to the March meeting, which could be exactly 1 month from today or something, if that's okay.
So we're going into March then. We need to look at dates. I changed the calendar, so we're now in 2024. We're still in 2023.
Whoops.
So I don't know what day works for people. Obviously, the 5th will be a council day. We can, I mean, if it's going to be a long meeting, like 2 or 3 hours, which it could be. Do we want to meet on that day, or do we not want to meet?
No. We never want to meet on a council day. I think we've done. That's not good. I'll be sitting in this chair for 8 hours, and
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's what I'm asking.
I'm gone for training for 4 days at the end of March.
March 14th is 4 weeks from now. If that works.
That would work for me if that works for.
I'm just gonna look and see. Should work.
Thursday is usually a good day for this, but yeah, I don't know what your guys' schedule
Yeah,
would dictate.
we have, but sometimes we've had them on other days, and I thought we had one, a short one, right? Like the afternoon of a. council
We
meeting,
have, and
which
that's
I
why
don't
I'm telling
wanna put on
you, I
guys
can't
either.
do that. Yeah, it's just too hard.
14th. What time do we want to look at? Do we want to look at a 2 o'clock still, or do we want to look at does it have to be later, earlier? What do we want to look at? Let's see.
Yeah, two is a good time. It works for me. 1:30, 2 o'clock. It's, you know.
Let's shoot for 2.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, because I have a 10 o'clock in the morning, but I'm done by 11:30. 14th of March. March 14th at 2 p.m. here in City Council Chambers, Finance Committee. Is there anything else for the good of the order? We are adjourned at 3:50 p.m.
So, Mr. Ledbetter, I have a couple of questions for you that I got from the Red Scarf Society.
Just hang on. Okay. I was just gonna say, hang on. Let hit stop recording, just in case.